Hi, Rose.
Hi, Janice.
Welcome everyone to Traditional Stitches Flosstube video number 3. Today we're going to be talking about our Ann Morison sampler and a few other things. Let me introduce first to you Rose Heck. She is the Stitch Along leader for our Ann Morison sampler. Hi, Rose.
Hi, Janice. Welcome, everybody.
And I am Janice. I'm the owner of Traditional Stitches. And the star of our show is our Ann Morison sampler.
I've got mine right here, but I'll let you hold it.
Designed by Nicola Parkman of Hands Across the Sea to celebrate Traditional Stitches' 20th anniversary in business.
She's so gorgeous.
Well, we've been loving seeing everybody's posts of their progress and even finishes on Facebook. There's nothing more that I am enjoying than at the end of the day having a scroll through Facebook and my feed is full of pictures of Ann at different stages.
The different stages, that blows me away. I want to stitch more on it, but I know I can't. But there's a lot of people that are finished, like we talked about before, but there's some gorgeous pieces out there.
Yeah.
Lots of different fabrics. So everyone's having fun with it.
Yes. Well, I've chosen Ann to be my Sunday afternoon project. So the shop is still super busy. I'm working 6 days a week and Sunday afternoons is my stitching time. So I sit down with a cup of tea and my floss tube and Sunday afternoons with Ann. I've been really enjoying it. I'm going to miss it when she's over.
It's a good plan. I think as soon as the 5th comes, I scurry through it and it's like an indulgence that I've been waiting for all month and I binge on it and then I'm done that month and I go, oh, I've got to wait another month for her. So maybe I need to pace myself.
Wow. Well, we are going to talk a little bit on later on in the video about other projects that we're spacing Ann out with and do some showing of our stitching. So that'll be good. I want to remind everybody that I will put links and hashtags for Instagram in the drop-down box below the video so that anything that we reference that you need, you can use internet research on, it'll be listed below for your reference.
Right.
So today's video, I have lots of notes. We're going to cover lots of topics today, so I'm going to be checking my notes. We've got a few Ann Morison specific things that we want to talk about, including specialty stitches, specifically eyelets on Ada. We're going to talk about plan of attack for this month's section of Ann. We're going to touch a little bit on some needlework tools. We talked about including a big section on that, but decided that it was just too vast of a subject and we're going to have to get back together and do a whole video on stitching tools. We're going to talk about upcoming plans, and Rose and I are going to talk about some other projects that we're stitching on to space out our Ann Morison sampler. So a few things that have come up in the Facebook group this month we're going to talk about. So the first one is that there is a missing symbol on the chart in one of the cross stitch A's. And Nicola has provided a correction for that, and I will insert that photo here, but Rose actually also has a printout of it that she can show you right now.
Okay. This is the printout of the missing symbol, and I have to just get up here. It's at intersection 53 and 47. So if you see that A, this is the symbol that is missing right there. Okay. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Rose.
You're welcome.
The other thing that Nicola has provided this month is a numbering chart for the sampler. So just the way that the page breaks and the line of overlap work on a booklet that is printed of this quality, sometimes the line of overlap is challenging. And so Nicola has provided us with a graph of all of the numbers run together so that it just helps a little bit of that. And Rose, you have a printout of that, and I'm also going to include it. I'm going to put a resource section at the very end of this video, and so there'll be pictures inserted with enough time that you can take screenshots of all of them at the end of the video. But Rose, go ahead and show your printout.
Sure. I loved that Nicola did this. And it's, hold it back a little bit. So this is the photo of what Nicola had posted on Facebook. It's at line 76. And I don't know about you, Janice, but a lot of times when I come to across a break at a page, I have a tough time figuring out what stitches to put. And I know designers really make it well with the, they gray it out and you count and that. I have screwed up so many times. So when I saw this, I thought that's a really good idea. So hopefully everyone will utilize that tool.
Yes. And thank you, Nicola, for that.
Yes.
And speaking of Nicola, Rose and I just noticed that we are both wearing scarves today. And coincidentally, Nicola's Flosstube video this past Saturday showed a scarf tying demo. Neither one of us have tied our scarves, but I'll link to Nicola's video below if you haven't seen that so that you can watch it. But
well,
there you go, Nicola.
Nicola, we appreciate that scarf tying session. I love when you wear a scarf. Please don't stop wearing a scarf. This, for both of us, comes as a necessity as it is in Celsius around -20 here in Alberta, and it's going to get colder this weekend. I'm just trying to see what that is in Fahrenheit for our Fahrenheit folks.
I did the math before we started our video so that we could mention it, and it's about -4 Fahrenheit.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I know that lots of people are getting weather this week. Rose and I were talking. Rose lives about an hour north of me, and she got almost no snow overnight, and we got about 3 inches. But we're both enjoying these freezing cold temperatures. The thing about being in Alberta in the middle of winter is that it can be so cold, but the sun still shines. So I really appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay, so the one other thing that has been of discussion on the Facebook group is this A on the cover of the sampler doesn't have a cross tie. So what to do about it? Well, Anne's sampler, the original, didn't have a cross on the A. And so the question is, how close to the original do you need to be? And I know we've talked about this before, but it's personal taste. So the advantage that we have of some people speeding ahead and finishing Anne's sampler is there are finished examples in our Facebook group of the A done both ways, without a cross tie and with a cross tie. So if you're contemplating, I suggest you just scroll through the group and look for those and see which example you like the best.
Personally, I haven't seen it. My thoughts, just like you, it's a real personal thing. If you feel that it's incomplete without that cross tie, then stitch it in. I'm more of a purist. I tend to lean towards the period as a period piece, and I won't be putting it in. There are 2 other spots that are, there's eyelet A's that also don't have it. So obviously this was the time that they didn't have it. Makes me wonder also the source, because of course these little girls were taught by teachers, and it makes me wonder the source that the teacher had for this style. So it's kind of intriguing in my opinion, but I am going to leave it out. But you do you. If you want to put it in, great. I'm not going to berate you, chew you out, tell you otherwise.
Right.
Okay?
You're the one that's going to enjoy the Anne Morison sampler hanging on your wall. So it's what's going to appeal to you for sure.
Right, right.
So Rose and I'm going to insert a picture of Rose's sampler at the current stage and a picture of my sampler. And again, they look pretty similar because we're both using the Soie 100/3 on the 45 count linen. And as hard as it is, we're being good and not rushing ahead.
Yeah.
So the specialty stitch that we wanted to talk about this video is the eyelet. Both doing eyelet on linen, but also eyelet on Aida. So Rose, do you want to talk about your experiments with doing the 16 strand or 16 leg eyelet on Aida cloth?
Sure. I did a bunch of experimenting on a lower count Aida just to see if it was doable to do a 16 leg eyelet. And it is. Now, the higher the count of Aida, obviously it's going to be a little more difficult to pierce that fabric. So you might want to use a sharper point needle in that case. But it's doable. So I'll show you some pictures of it in progress. Unfortunately, well, this is my piece, and this is a lower count Hersha. Is it 6 count? So I'll show you my playing around, and that's my finished. That's not going to show. Let me. There. So that's my finished eyelet on Aida. On my phone, I can show you the progress picture. So there is where the eyelet has started, and you can see the first and third leg are through a hole, but the second leg, I have pierced it. And as I progress, you can see it's starting to become more of an eyelet. And I've been going around on this just to demo. And there is the third, oh, there we go. There is a third eyelet finished. So it is definitely doable. Okay. I have some alternatives, and I'm actually going to show on the phone because I have the text on it. So you can always screenshot this for reference.
Right. And I will insert all of these photos at the end of
Perfect.
the video as well.
Okay. So you can see some alternatives that I have chosen if you don't want to do the 16 leg eyelet. And I guess I could put in here now too, if you really don't want to do the 16 leg eyelet, those other 3 are alternatives.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are some people that are really having qualms about doing it. It's difficult. Takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time.
It can look a little bit overstuffed too. I always suggest that when a stitch like this is new to you, or a fiber is new to you and you're not quite sure how it's going to behave, use the margin of your linen to test stitch. And then you've got a permanent record of your experiments. I've seen lots of antique samplers and lots of teachers samplers where you can see their testing trials of their stitches just in the margin of their linen. So do that just in your framing allowance.
That's a really good idea. I never thought of that. I don't do that enough. And I know Nicola does say that, test in the margin. Try these things out before you do it. So,
yeah. So a couple other things about eyelets is that Nicola posted on the Facebook group a short but good video about eyelet strategy when you're doing something that has quite a few eyelets in it, like a B or the C, about how to work around and count your eyelets. That video is currently only available in Facebook, but I'm going to ask Nicola if she can make it public that I can link to it below. So because we know that we have lots of people that are following our videos and the progress of the Morison sampler that aren't necessarily on Facebook. Right. So we'll see what we can do, and we'll post that in the section below.
That's a good idea. We can always learn.
Yeah. And so a question about eyelets is how tight do you pull them? How big do you make that hole in the center of your eyelet? Mm-hmm. And we talk about this a lot, and it's personal preference. Mm-hmm. I think that a tightly pulled eyelet looks a little bit lacier, a little bit more open, but that might not necessarily be the look you're going through for. And sometimes those are a little bit harder to be more consistent on. So when I'm working an eyelet, I usually take my needle, but there are tools out there called awls. And this I'll show you as an example of one made by a local artisan. We also carry some beautiful solid wood ones in the shop, and I'll link to those below. This one has the equivalent of, I'd say probably an 18 or a 20 tapestry needle inserted in the end of it. So before you start your stitch, you would insert this in the middle of what's going to be your eyelet and wiggle it around a little bit. And how much you wiggle it, or on a tapered awl, how much you put it in the hole is going to help determine how open your eyelet is. Again, try in the margin of your fabric and see what appeals to you. My personal challenge with eyelets is the effect of the last leg of the eyelet and how I pull my thread or travel my thread on the back of my work to the next eyelet. Because you're working around in a circle and you want to kind of keep that circular tension. So I find that quite often when I'm doing my eyelets, I really strategize about, I go make that last leg, go down through the linen, and then how I run my thread underneath the backs of my stitches is just to maintain that consistency of the shape of the eyelet. Even if I want to travel to the left or travel off to the right, I still want that last leg pulled in the same direction at the end.
You do, especially if you're pulling your eyelets a little tight to achieve that lacy effect, you do not want to have a line of your floss coming across the hole. So you may see it under that magnifier. You may not see it, but still you know it's there. And you're right about the strategizing. And I kind of like to think of it as a running eyelet, much like you're moving, like you said, from one to another. So I believe Nicola on her video has it where you do half of the eyelet, move to the next one, half. So I like to think of that as I'm running along, doing half and then coming back to finish off.
So if you have any questions about eyelets or anything like that, leave them in the comments section below. And if it's something we feel that we can address better in the next video, we'll certainly do that.
Correct. Yeah.
One other thing about eyelets is that quite often they're a little bit overwhelming. So break it up. Do one letter and then go treat yourself to a section of cross stitch just to break it up.
It's a good idea. I like that.
So this ties in well to the next thing that we're going to talk about is our section of and sampler for February. And so that is the introduction of these first two alphabet bands.
Right.
So I have stitched a lot of alphabets, a lot of samplers, a lot of alphabets, and they're not my favorite actually to stitch.
That's funny. I love alphabets, absolutely love them, until you have done so many that you make mistakes because you get into a routine and you don't pay attention because you've done so many of them.
So in the alphabets, this sampler, the first two rows are nice because they're nice and tight. So you don't have to worry about carrying your threads so much behind your, from one letter to the other, although the second alphabet is the darker red. And so if you have carried threads, I would strategize so that you only carry them a maximum of one space. So if, for example, you look at the W here, I would make sure that I traveled at the top of the W to the top of the X, up in there to do my traveling. I wouldn't travel more in the middle of the letters because that would be more likely to be seen through on the project when it's done.
So what is your maximum that you would travel in a light colored thread? Not red, because I would not travel with
Yeah.
red. What is your maximum?
3 or 4 maybe.
Oh, really?
Stitches.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's a light colored thread.
I'll do no more than 2.
Oh, really? Maybe that's
Yeah.
why I don't like alphabet so much, is it's lots of starting and stopping sometimes.
And so most alphabets are a maximum of 2, but there are areas where you just can't get around, and I will finish it off and start again. But you're right about the strategizing, and sometimes, you know, you're doing half stitches going out and coming back so that you can cross to that next letter.
Yeah.
So,
or weaving in underneath the backs of your stitches on the back of your work to
behind.
get to the space that you need to be in.
That's a good way of doing it either. So for those that are listening to this, if you get caught in a corner and you can't get out, it's okay to weave back to the next start, okay? Instead of ending your thread. Now, sometimes I'm a little bit stingy with my floss and I don't want to do that. So, you know, I will finish it off and start again, but it's okay to weave behind. Right. So I give you guys all permission to do that.
Yeah, that's great. There's no stitching police, right, Rose?
No stitching police, thank goodness.
So on the Facebook group this month, you posted, started a conversation about stitching tools.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah, and I thought that was a great thread. And like we said, we could do a whole probably series of videos on stitching tools. But the one thing that you showed was the use of your micro needle threader to thread your beading needles with the Soie 100/3, because I know that the beading needles are really nice because they fit, if you're working on the finer count linen with the 100/3, they fit into the linen well. But the other thing is, because the eye is smaller, your silk thread is less likely to slip out of the eye while you're working on it. But that is a pretty tiny little eye.
It is, yeah. So I have 2 micro threaders, only because my one, I don't know if you can see, let me see where we are. There's my one. He's got a little bit of a wow in him.
He's well used.
It's very well used, well loved. So I had to get another one, my flying pig. These, you can fiddle all you want with these tiny little needles to thread. I'm just trying to get my thread out here. There we go. But I mean, if you're working with these number 10 needles, it's kind of hard to see, you would probably want to get a micro threader. So the way you use them, let me bring this in the shot. I don't have my magnifier. There we go. So you'll place it into the needle, and there we go, into the needle, the eye of the needle, and I'm just kind of working here. Here's my 103. You'll pull it over the hook, get it back in there, and then I've got this a little far away, so bear with me here. It's not going to work. Let's pretend it's on there. It's not coming. And then you're going to pull it through. So this works a lot better when I have it closer up with a magnifier. Essentially, that's how you're going to use this. And I think it's an essential tool you really need to have when you're working with these number 10 needles and 103. It avoids the licking the floss, and I'm trying to be a really good girl and not do that at all. I see a little bit of the eyebrows. Yeah. I'm really, really trying to be good. So that, and trying to keep the needles out of my mouth. I've got some bad habits.
Well, when you've been stitching as long as we are, they're kind of a little bit hard to break.
I know.
So the needle threaders that you showed, the metal ones,
yes,
are from Puffin & Company.
Yes.
And we do carry those on our website. The other option is always just a wire needle threader for sewing, but those, you tend to go through those a little bit too.
They can break because it's just a wire. I find them harder to get through, harder to manipulate. These are a lot firmer. These will go through. So I highly recommend these. That's why I have two, partially because I work in different places.
Sure.
So handy.
Good. Another thing that so when Rose and I get together like this, we have good conversations by video before I hit the record button. And so one thing that we talked about today was slubs on linen and how we handle those. And so we wanted to differentiate two things. One is the thick, thin nature of the linen fabric. If you've worked on linen, you have experience where the thread will get, or the weave of the fabric will get really, really tiny and skinny in one area, but it'll be quite thick, and maybe your thread doesn't cover it so well in another area. So that is just the nature of linen. And we were talking about how we appreciated that it is part of the character and charm of why we like to stitch on linen is that. And then the other part of slubs is actually the balls of linen fiber that end up on the top of your fabric. And so the big question is, what do you do with those?
I've had some discussions with one of my mentees about this. We didn't know really what to call them. We called them nubs balls. They're a little bit different than your slubs that fall along the lines like you were saying on the warp and the weft. These actually externally stick out. Why they're there, it could be the nature of the flax that was used, the weaving process, many different things. It doesn't matter why, they are there. So you can stitch over them. But the big, actually, I'll show you one. Let me just find it here. Because I came across it last evening and I decided instead of stitching over it, I would show. This is a little hard. Let me find where I am here. Okay. This is hard.
Oh, I can see it. I know exactly what you mean.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So I could stitch over it, but we were talking about this before. The one thing you should never do is cut it out. The scissors should not, because as soon as you cut that out, that's part of your fiber of your linen. So you're cutting linen. And in that nature, you may be putting a hole in your linen.
Yeah.
So don't keep the scissors away from it. So you can stitch over it. You can ignore it if it's in a place where you're not stitching, or it brings another tool that once in a while I bring out, and it's called a snag nabbit. I'm not going to demo because I need 4 hands to do that. I will show you what it is against my black sleeve. So it looks like a very long needle. Okay, it's fairly thick. It's very pointy on, see, very pointy on the one end. And it's got what I call knurling. So kind of cross hatching here, it's rough. And this is something that if you put it through the hole where this nub is, the ball, and pull it through, you can get it on the back side and disappear. Much like if you have something on a knitted piece of a garment, you can pull it through. Try this though, if you have one of these, try it on the edge first of your linen to make sure that it doesn't destroy it or distort it.
Yeah, so that you know what to expect from it. I was taking a sampler class once years and years ago, and I had one of those kind of knots of fiber on the top of my fabric. And I picked at it with a needle and I did make a hole in my linen. Yeah. And so what I think that was just like anything that's woven, at some point you run out of thread. And so I think that it was kind of where they were trying to match the end of one length of thread with the start of another. And that was what caused the accumulation of fiber there. So thankfully, I was really at the beginning of the project, I was only a few hours in, so it didn't break my heart to start over again. But I would also always caution somebody that if you're picking a little bit at that, if you roll your needle over it, or if you pick it, that is a potential consequence of trying to fix that. And there are ways to fix if you end up with a hole in your linen, but it's pretty unnerving, especially if you're well dedicated into your time and your project. So anything that you do with that, I would say just really, really proceed with caution.
Correct. And you mentioned one thought about if you do get a hole in your linen, Nicola has a really good video about how to repair a hole in your linen.
Oh.
It came out after I had a couple of oopsies. So it is definitely fixable, and it's actually kind of fun to fix. I don't recommend it, but it isn't as bad as you think it is. But if you happen to have a hole in your linen, check that out.
Yeah, but we don't encourage making holes in linen. Right.
No, unless you're doing hardanger or hardanger.
And different brands of linen and even different batches within a brand of linen have different amounts of these thick, thin, and the slubs and stuff that are in them. And again, the nature of linen coming from flax, which is a little bit of a woody plant, it's not nearly as predictable as some of the synthetic things that we're also stitching on.
I think it also might have something to do regional, where the flax is grown. And there again, it goes down to the organics and, you know, the water, the feeding, the sun. And I know you're going to say, what does that have to do with my linen? Well, it has everything, because that can affect the quality. And then, of course, where it is woven also, and different things in that part. So I think it was mentioned, I don't know if it was mentioned by you, but check the piece of linen that you have before stitching. So maybe you have to strategize. Yeah. So if it's 4 inches from the edge, maybe you can scooch your piece over so that it doesn't involve that. If it's something in the middle and you have a lot of it, you have to go to plan B, whatever plan B is to you.
Great. So again, ask questions. I am going to insert into the video, or at the end, whichever works better, a couple of pictures of my Ann Morison sampler where I have cross-stitched over thicker areas of the linen thread so that my cross-stitch isn't quite as much coverage as the stitches next to it. But always remember that when you're working on your project and you're looking at it under magnification or really close up, some of the things that you're seeing, you're not even going to notice when she's framing on your wall, and certainly nobody else is going to notice either.
Yeah, I think we discussed this the last time, that little anomalies that you may see, you will not see on the wall. You don't stick your nose to your picture and look closely. So it's the overall effect that you want, not that close-up magnification.
Yeah. We sure do love our Ann.
We do.
Yeah, she is giving so many people so much joy, and she's just working up so beautifully. And so unfortunately, the charts are all sold out. We do still have some thread and linen available kits for the sampler. If you stashed the chart or decided that you wanted to change what your kit came with, we do have some stock of that still in the shop, and you can just reach out to us and we can get that to you. But Rose, we mentioned at the beginning of the video that we're having to stitch on other projects in between our Ann sections just to keep, you know, so show us what you've been working on.
I'll show you the one that is my main one. I've got 3 others, but this is my main evening one, needle minder sticking. This is called Letters from Mum by Jeanette Douglas, and I'll sit back. So can you see that?
Yes, that's great.
Okay. So she is done on a 36 count legacy linen from Picture This Plus. And it is done with hand-dyed cotton floss. And Jeanette graciously put in each chart, because there's 13 charts to this. So the borders are all done with a cotton thread by Cottage Garden Threads, and they're highly variegated, but boy, do they look neat in the borders. So I've really been enjoying that and going to town. So hopefully in another 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be done with that. So don't worry, there's lots more in the queue.
Well, I've been watching, really enjoying watching that come together on your Instagram. And I've seen that you've had a few comments from Jeanette Douglas on it as well as you've gone along. So that's great. So that did come out in a series of 13 charts. So it's the middle chart and then the monthly ones that go around the outside perimeter of it. And Jeanette's included some customizations in there, so it doesn't have to be letters to mom. It can be other family members. And the designs are also meant to be standalones for little ornaments or keepsakes as gifts as well.
And she also did that design so that you could do them individually and make the center piece that with the lacy as an envelope and then letters.
Oh, so you can finish them as cards and tuck them inside.
That's right. I had debated about that, and then I had debated about making one for each of my kids. So if anybody does know me, I have more than one child, so I decided not to. So when I'm gone, they can fight over this one.
It does kind of look like you're running out of space on your walls, though, judging from what I see behind you.
Don't worry, I've got plans.
Okay, good to hear. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I'm working on. So this is Winter Rose Manor by With Thy Needle, Brenda Gervais. And I have fallen victim to what everybody else is falling victim to, where the supplies are not available. And I was telling the girls in my shop this the other day that I don't actually have much of a stash. I've got tons of projects that are kitted up and in progress with the supplies in them, but I don't actually have very much of a stash of linen and threads that aren't specific to those projects. And that's because I thought, I own a needlework shop. I can get it when I need it. Well, the pandemic has proven me wrong.
Yep.
So I'm going to hold up my work and show it to you. And you're going to see that there's lots of hunks that are missing, and that's because I'm waiting on threads, just like everybody else is. So also, we had talked about frames before, and this project I'm working in hand. So it's pretty scrunchy and scrunchy, and I briefly thought about ironing it before we came on video, but this is a real world. So
exactly.
Here's my scrunchy scrunchy project.
Oh, what are you doing it on?
I am doing it on the 40 count Brenda's Brew.
Okay.
So the chart includes both the sampler and it also includes this pin cushion. And so Brenda's instructions say that the sampler is to be done on 36 count and the 40 count is to be used for the pin cushion. But I decided that I'm going to smush them both into the same piece of 40 count linen.
Oh, okay.
So I did change up some threads, and once I have finalized my thread changes, I will post that on our website so that people can do the same thing. But yeah, it's been a really nice stitch too.
That one is in my queue to do, but I'm not starting that until my birthday.
Is that coming up?
I know, because I am a winter rose. I am literally a winter rose. So, and it's a milestone birthday, so I am starting that one, but not yet. Not until the winter.
Oh, well, that's going to be a great present for you.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. Okay, so then I want to talk about a few things that are going to happen in the next couple of weeks here for us. I am very excited about our upcoming exclusive sampler that is by a designer that's not Hands Across the Sea sampler. It's quite a bit different, but it is by one of the top designers in the industry that is done specifically for our shop to celebrate the 20th anniversary. And I'm very excited about it. We're going to be starting the advertising for it next week and then hope to be shipping the middle of March. It's pandemic supply chain dependent, of course, but we've talked to everybody involved and they seem to think it's doable, so that's our plan. The model was done in hand-dyed cotton floss, but we're also going to be providing a hand-dyed silk thread conversion from a local hand dyer. And we got a picture of the finalized conversion yesterday and it's gorgeous and I can't wait. Kathleen, who's my office manager in my shop, is going to stitch that version. So we will have a picture of it to share with you. So stay tuned. I'll do a really short little video when that's ready. Then the Nashville Needlework Market. So Traditional Stitches has been going to the Nashville Needlework Market for 16 or 17 years without missing one. And of course, it's been canceled this year because of the challenges that the pandemic poses for everybody. So instead, the designers have gotten together and they're doing a virtual Needlework Expo. So shops that normally would have traveled to Nashville to buy the newest, latest, greatest are going to have the opportunity to buy from the designers during this online Needlework Expo. And that's going to be the first weekend in March, the 6th to the 8th. And we've already started to see previews of the designs from some of the designers. And so we're listing those on our website as we can. And keep your eyes out, there's some exciting stuff coming. So the Needlework Expo does have a Facebook group, and you can also follow the hashtag, which I will link below. And then we're going to do our next Dan Morrison video to be ready for about the 5th of March. And Nicola has agreed to be my special guest on that video. So it does kind of depend on how her internet connection is cooperating. But we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A with Nicola, focusing particularly on how designers feel about making changes, colors, designs, that kind of thing to their designs. But we can also ask her other things. So if you think of questions that you'd like me to ask of Nicola, list them below. If the video doesn't end up working out, we'll find another way to get you those answers. But I think that'll be fun.
Good. Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah. So you can put your comments below or you can email me with your questions. And the other thing that I had was, we haven't talked about this a lot, but Nicola has generously donated an antique sampler that is the red and green sampler for a prize for people who have finished the Ann Morrison sampler by the year end of our stitch along date. So how that's going to work is that we're going to ask you to send us your name and a picture of your finished project. And then at the end of the year, we're going to do a draw of those submissions and somebody's going to win an antique sampler. And Rose, you know from experience that it's a realistic possibility.
It really is. Yeah, I did win. I finished Jane Bannister two years ago. I'm looking because she's behind me here. And I was one of the recipients of an antique sampler graciously given by Nicola. And I believe that one was also through, was that Linen and Threads also? Nicola, you can correct me, it's been a while. But I did win that sampler and it's gorgeous. So anybody can win it. We've discussed that before, but I hate to be redundant, but you can win it also.
Yes. So there is a little bit of a change in the email address for submitting your finished samplers. And so I'm going to write that below, but the email address is going to be contest@traditionalstitches.com. And Nicola's just asked us to handle that particular thing. So we're happy to do that. So that link, the email address will be listed below.
And this is the change just for this, for Ann Morrison only.
Yes, any other contests that Nicola is running for Hands Across the Sea samplers will still be for the email address that she has provided specifically for those. Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that takes care of our great big long list of topics.
I think so too. I'm just kind of looking around going, yeah, I think we took care of it.
Okay, perfect. Well, now I'm going to sit down and do some editing and inserting some pictures and stuff. So then we'll post this as soon as we can.
Sounds good.
Okay, Rose, keep warm.
I will.
Okay.
Take care, Janice.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.